We had this cool project down in downtown Calgary. Prime Movers was hired to basically relocate this 40,000-pound I-beam. The demo company removed the beam, put it on the ground, and we had to jack and roll it on site to actually lift this thing into place. It had to get lifted about 15 feet. Again, this is where, the design build rigging systems really come into play, because we were able to really displace the load and the impacts to the floor over a wider area. So shoring was really minimized. In addition to that, after we had installed that beam, the bearing that the beam sits on wasn't fabricated yet when we installed the beam. So we actually had to go back and lift the one end of the beam up just to slide this little half-inch thick bearing. What was interesting about that is they had already started tying in a lot of the I-beams to this main structural beam. So we were able to go in with our hydraulic gantries and honestly in one day basically set the gantries up underneath the I-beam on the one end, and the gantries plug into 110 power, and we were able to push the beam up the 1/4 inch and replace the bearings. The next big job we did was our concrete removal. Their dilemma was they had about 150 tons of concrete that needed to be removed, and the conventional methods of removing the concrete would basically require shoring and crash decks underneath, at which point the demo contractor comes and basically hammers it all up. There was a bunch of steam piping and live infrastructure underneath the concrete slabs, and that just didn't allow for any crash decks to be built. And that's when we got the phone call to come up with basically another solution. Prime Movers owns and operates one of the largest knuckle booms in southern Alberta. And that particular crane had the chart and the capacity to reach all of the concrete slabs inside the building. We set the crane up outside on 5th Ave. We used the crane to basically poke right into the building to remove a lot of the concrete. In addition to that, we worked with our client's engineering company to develop the sequencing and how the cuts were to take place. One of the really cool things that we did, we hung a scale off the crane hook, and we also hung a spreader bar off that scale. The spreader bar that we were using was oversized of the cut holes, so even in the event of a mechanical failure, the slab that we were cutting would never be able to fall through the floor. When we do the final cut, there would be no deviation with the crane, which was one of the concerns, is if you cut, does the crane go down, does the crane go up? And because we pre-tensioned it to exactly what the slab cuts were, it never moved, and it really made the process of the extraction extremely safe. It mitigated a ton of risk. It was the right way to do the job. So the slab removal was done with our knuckle boom crane out on the street. However, there was one section that they weren't able to remove, and we weren't able to actually remove that piece of concrete with the crane. So what we ended up doing is setting up our hydraulic gantry system and using the gantry system along some structural beams to remove the last couple sections of concrete. And the client did not need to remove the remainder of the curtain wall, which saved the client a bunch of money. So we were very happy with how that went as well.
The last part of our scope involved the installation of the escalators. There's 2 escalators that we were contracted to put in after a lot of that concrete work was done. After we pulled all that concrete out of the main floor area, they actually ended up, poured a whole new slab. So Prime Movers received the escalators for this project a handful of months prior to the actual install date. We held them at our facility, and when instructed, brought them down to site. Thankfully, the new concrete poured was thick enough and had enough capacity that we didn't actually need to do any shoring when we rolled the escalators into site. So using the same crane and equipment that we had previously for the concrete removal, we offloaded the escalators onto the sidewalk and jack and rolled them into the building. There was a bit of a challenge because there was about a 3-foot jump up elevation change once we got into the building. So we used our hydraulic gantries to lift each escalator section up that 3 feet, land on kind of a temporary roadway, and then we moved in from there. Once we got all the escalators into the building, Prime Movers then gave the elevator contractor the use of a lot of our equipment, and they actually assembled the escalators on site themselves in the full configuration. So this one was actually relatively straightforward. We were able to use 2 of our hydraulic gantries on the second floor and 2 of our hydraulic gantries on the lower floor. The second floor did have a bit of a challenge. Part of the floor was kind of an odd architectural shape, and our gantry fit with, a 1/4 inch on the other side. So the team ended up coming in 4 or 5 in the morning, bringing all of the equipment in up the elevator onto second floor. We actually were able to drive our spider crane into the elevator, and it wouldn't fit perfectly straight in. So as they were coming in the elevator, they had to kind of pull a boom up and kind of articulate it up into the core, but it fit. We got onto second floor, and using the spider crane for assistance, we were able to assemble our hydraulic system on the top. Hydraulic system on the bottom was built quite simply, and that was about it. We worked with the elevator contractor to get these escalators lifted into place, and basically the project was completed over 3 days, and it was a slam dunk.